And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Today we're going to be looking at You've Been Sentenced, the country music edition. All right, because that makes sense to be sentenced like country. Okay, well, I'm not going to make much sense of it. You've Been Sentenced is a popular party word game that's been out, and apparently there's been a lot of expansions for it. There was a food one, a sports one. Those are small expansions, these size boxes. So they came out with a whole new one, Country Music Edition. I can't say that is what I would have expected, but I'm assuming there's a market for it. Maybe you're watching it and you'll be interested in that. But regardless of whether you like country music or not, and I'm not a huge fan of it, the game will still prove interesting. We'll look at it in just a second, but I also want to say we're going to talk about two mini expansions too today. The NASA Space Terminology, now this is way more my speed, nerd, and the Brainbuster Word Challenge A through L only, also my speed, double nerd. Well, let's take a look at the game. Let's take a look at the main game first, the Country Western Edition. No kidding, this is the stack of cards. Look at that. There are a ton of cards in this game. And each of these cards is shaped like a pentagon, which has 5 sides. And that's because on the other side, they each have different words. For example, here we have when will, when would, which of, which the, when can. Here we have on the rope swing, wild country artists, Kenny Chesney, Mark Chestnut, and Aaron Tippin. And you know how many of those people I know? None of them. Here we have dances, dancer, danced, line dancing, and dance. So the way the game works is each player is dealt 10 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then what you are going to do is you're going to try to make a sentence with these. So let's see, I might say, Mark Chestnut dances until the hairy keeper rides. Okay. Wow. Let's put Smoky Mark Chestnut dances until the hairy keeper rides. All right, so that's my sentence, and I don't even know what it means. But is it grammatically correct? Well, technically it is. Okay? Smoky Mark Chestnut dances until the hairy keeper rides. Now, if there's an argument, and people say, that sentence makes no sense, and I can see some people arguing against the sentence because it's a moronic one. But you can argue over it as a group and decide whether a sentence passes or not. Now, when one person finishes their sentence, whether it's 2 hexes or more, they'll flip this timer, and the person who flips this timer gets an extra 10 points. Everyone else has till the timer runs out to finish their sentences. If you happen to use all 10 cards, which happens occasionally, you would be surprised, then you also get a bonus 10 points. So you could get a bonus 20 points. Now, the points that you will score are equal to the points listed on the cards. As you can see, there's 5s listed on all these. So this sentence here would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. But not everything is 5 points. There are wild cards, which you can see are a different color, and there's 0, but it can mean anything. Although there's a wild artist, you can use any country music artist, and then he's worth 5 points. And occasionally there are cards that are worth more than 5 points depending on which side you use. But one of the things about this game that's good is that, you know, when you have a thing, you have mouth, mouths, mouthy, mouthing off, or mouthwash. I'm sorry, that's funny. Basically, you can flip them around and use them in various ways. Here, freaks, freakier, freakiest, freaked out, and freak. But notice the freaked out is worth 10 points. And so there's a lot of different things. And there's also a lot of regular cards. Don't worry about, you know, here's I, it, me, you, them. There's cards with the on them, too, and. So you're able to build regular sentences. You just got to figure out how to do it with the cards you got. You'll keep track of all the scores on a score pad, and then you go to the next round, and after a certain number of rounds, whoever has the most points is the winner. So it's a pretty simple game. You get 10 cards with 5 words on them each round, so that's 50 choices that you have, 50 words you have to make a sentence with, and you'll see a lot of people who will laugh about these cards and do different things. Now, let's talk about these little expansions. First, we have the NASA expansion. Well, this basically is a bunch of cards that you can either use as a side deck or you can mix them into the main deck. Now, I prefer to mix them in the main deck because why would we not have a country music artist in the Mercury program? And so they are the Mercury program, Gemini program, Apollo program, Space Shuttle program, International Space Station. There's also wild cards, a wild astronaut, Michael Collins, John Young, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and James Lovell. Or New Horizons, Dawn, the Gamma Large Area Space Telescope. I mean, I use that in sentences all the time. But there's also nebula, nebular, nebulous, nebulously, and nebulousness. Notice that nebulously could be used in all sorts of things, not just something about NASA, which is, I like it. But it also comes with your typical words. You got so, of, it, until, like. So there's other regular words. So when you add these expansion decks, they don't fill it with just more complicated words. They have smaller ones. So you can play this where you mix it in, or you can have it like a sideboard where you draw 2 cards from the top of it and add it to your hand. Now, the next set, the Brain Buster set, actually has a different back because you're not supposed to mix this in. I did, but what do I know? These have words on them that are much bigger words. You know, the words that most people don't use. Now, a lot of people use devoid in a sentence, but if you can fit devoid into a sentence here, these all give you 10 points. You're not supposed to mix these in. You're supposed to just put these to the side. Beseech, dejected, credulous, haberdasher, enunciate. And so when you look at these words, they're all worth 10 points. Well, not all of them. Some of them are worth more words than that. Like here, legerdemain is worth 25 points. And I would say, I'm sure that my listeners and watchers here are incredibly verbose in the words that they use. And so you know what all these mean. I knew what over half the words meant, but I do not know what they all mean. Now, of course, legerdemain is the art of doing things with your hand, being very good at magic tricks and illusion. And of course, I just knew that because I looked it up. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. But if you could use that in a sentence, that's 25 points. So this is an interesting thing. I like using these, but if you play with kids or people who you like to say like and like all the time, this is really going to throw them off. But still, you can mix both these in. Now I'm a big fan of You've Been Sentenced. I personally would get the regular version over the country music edition. However, if this was the only version available, it wouldn't bother me. Sure, I don't know who any of the people are. I just stick one of them in a sentence, but it adds a lot more words. In fact, I would prefer to mix this with the regular version to make a stack of cards this high, especially when I add in all the expansions and, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And both of these expansions. Now, the NASA space one, like I said, I like it because I'm a geek, but I really like this Brain Busters one because I like forcing people, well, and I'm not forcing others, I guess, to force myself to increase my vocabulary, to use words that I normally do not use. And this was a good thing. You will find that this will bring up some incredible laughter as people will race to make sentences and everybody laughs at how ridiculous the sentences are. And then, of course, they argue whether they are a sentence or not. And the game has very strict rules on you can't use sentence fragments. You can use a wild card to add apostrophe S to the end of a word. If a word's in parentheses, you may or may not use it in a sentence. That's up to you. But you got to make sentences. And so teachers will find something like this very useful because it teaches things grammatically. While other people will enjoy it just because it's fun. So the only negative thing I'll say against this game is that the box size, I know it's a neat idea for them, drives me nuts because it's hard to fit on a shelf. And fitting these expansions into the main box is a real chore because you have to take out the plastic insert and so on. That's a minor thing. Still a pretty fun game. You've Been Sentenced, Country Music Edition.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door.